heavy metal. It's all dumb music, it's just a racket, it's a row. It's played by long-haired guys that have got no intelligence.
Like I fell in love for metal music because at those times it was something wild and different from the masses of people listening something different, and it was rebellious and against society, like against the common people. Yeah.
Metal bands talk about topics that are taboo in daily life, in society. So they talk about death and sex, religion.
Yeah, the metal scene is like an outcast scene, and most of the outcast movement, the people who belong to this scene or movement are really dedicated, really into it because they feel like they are kind of fighting against something, or they need to prove they are a real culture and not just noise or people with long hair or people with mohawks. So they need to prove and to the rest of the world that they are really something and a real culture.
Ever since I was a young teen, metal was a big part of my life. Even when still prejudiced as those scary, long-haired men listening to that terrible noise, it was the German power metal band Blind Guardian that pulled me into the metal scene and never released me from its grip. After listening one of their popular songs, Ashes to Ashes, I was hooked by the sheer power, the aggression, and even the optimism this song radiated. I knew from that moment on that I wanted to know more about this intriguing music. Besides the fascination for the music itself, I started developing another fascination. After meeting so many fans all over the world, who are these people exactly, these metalheads? While hosting international bands and guests in the Little Devil, a rock and metal bar in the Netherlands, I wanted to know if it was possible for metal music to function as a uniting musical genre all over the continent, or if it was dependent on the place of origin. My name is Nick Rovers. I graduated on Communication, International Event, Music and Entertainment Studies. Together with Friso van Dalen and Helene Fleur, I decided to investigate the people behind the music. What are their stories? What is it that draws these people together, even across borders? To find out, we set out on an epic road trip across Europe. 3 friends, 2 handheld cameras, no budget. During this adventure, we got the chance to talk to pioneers, known and unknown artists from over 60 heavy metal bands from 19 different countries, to find out how the social and cultural differences have given shape to the contemporary metal scene in Europe of today. Before taking off on a European journey, we started closer to home as we interviewed the young UK band Exist Immortal at Complexity Fest.
I think the UK has just such a strong heritage with music and punk music and like the original forms of metal that I think there's always just something, it's almost like the home of heavy metal, because all the kind of bands that started it, all the punk bands that came about in the 70s that started it, they're all like from London and were born out of the all the political shit going on at the time, and they all came out of that. So I think because the UK has such a rich history, more so than most other countries, I think that I don't know, just gives it a slight edge where everything's cool. You go to a venue and you'll look at it and say, oh shit, this venue that's been around for 60 years, the Rolling Stones played it. Or like the Beatles played at this one, exactly. Or like some fucking some
rich musical history.
Yeah, I think that's probably the main
so
thing.
used to practice in the recording studio over the road.
Yeah.
And you're just standing there, people love that. Man.
There's so much history at the metal scene. It's good. The only problem with the UK is very small, so there's not like you can't like tour very often. You can't, when you do tour, you can't go and do like a 30-day tour and make money because there's not 30 places you can play.
At Baruch Open Air, an underground festival at the Zuiderpark in Rotterdam, we spoke with the new wave of British heavy metal band Tokyo Blade, active since 1982. While wondering why the hell they would cross the sea to play a gig in Rotterdam, we learned more about the British mentality.
It's less stigmatized than it was. There certainly was a point in time where it was very, very stigmatized, and if you listened to heavy metal, it was a real. It's difficult to say, but you were kind of you were lumped into a category of people that like that heavy, noisy crap. That was kind of the category that you were shoehorned into by the mainstream media. We could have probably made more money if we'd have been a pop band or some other genre of music back in the day. But you have to stay true to what you want to do and what you believe in. So people listen to a Tokyo Blade album and they say, I love, if they're a fan of the band, I love the music you play. Don't care what you look like, don't care how old you are, it doesn't interest me, not bothered about it. And that's a big difference between what we do and say, for instance, what a pop band does. Because a pop band is a moulded product in every respect, just the same as a fish finger or whatever. It's a moulded product. You have to look this way, you have to dance that way, you have to have 5 boys, they all have to be very good looking. That's a kind of a moulded thing. That's fine, because it feeds that market. It's just not the market that we're in, which is just as well, because we're not very good looking, we're not very young, there is 5 of us, and we don't dance too well.
No.
Well, I think you do, don't you? You dance very well. Andy dances fairly well, as you can see.
Not on camera.
But not on camera. The price of rent, the price of everything has gone up. So for the average pub landlord to even book a band, he's talking about making quite a lot of money in drinks to cover the price of the band. And so, and because it's turning it, we're turning it, everywhere is turning into a society of people that care about nothing more than profit. So, to a large extent, creativity, artistic creativity, is very much kind of, there's no money in that. Obviously, you would have heard the term bulldog spirit, the British bulldog spirit, which
I don't know exactly what
we if you want to go into the psychological reasons and the historical reasons, it's because Britain is an island nation, and Britain is surrounded by water. Britain has had everybody in the world tried to take it over, from Vikings, Romans, Christ knows who, Germans, fucking you name it. For some reason, everybody's wanted that little island, and I think that does, definitely play a part in British mentality. We have an island mentality where we are, fuck it.
It's good, sometimes it's not.
Yeah, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But we have an attitude which is, fuck it, no matter how tough the shit gets, keep going. I don't know what it is. We couldn't explain. We couldn't tell you what it is. We couldn't tell you, as I say, we couldn't tell you why we're here today. I can't give you an explanation. If somebody had said to me maybe 20 years ago, you're going to get up at fucking silly o'clock in the morning, you're going to fly to Holland for next to fuck all, do a gig, and then the next morning you're going to get up really early again and fuck off back to England, I'd have said you must be fucking crazy. There's not a chance we're going to do that. But we are, because we enjoy what we're doing.
So it seems difficult to make money in the UK playing in a metal band. We wondered if this would be the same on another island in Europe, Iceland.
The Icelandic music is a really big part of the Icelandic culture. Everybody listens to Icelandic music. it's just everywhere. So it's really hard to go through your life without being exposed to it and take an interest in it. And that makes you want to do it yourself as well.
I mean, living in Iceland in the 12th or 13th century, and then again in the 17th or 19th century, has always been shit. You know, it's terrible weather and conditions. You know, so I think music has kind of been the only thing that has kind of gotten people happy, if you want. If you know, it's a brutal way to say, but.
Yeah.
It's not the only thing, but you know what I mean. We have a lot of music that has survived through the generations.
Which is pretty morbid, though. That music.
It's very morbid, yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of not
Very
the jolly
good,
thing you expect.
No. So music has been the kind of outlet for people. If you're living on this rock in the Atlantic Ocean, I remember 4 or 5 times in the middle of the night, my mom would wake me up, take me to the living room window and look, and there was a volcanic eruption somewhere, you know, pink sky, and it was, that's close to my grandparents. Yeah, but we'll go there tomorrow. And I was, you know, and then it's extremely cold. The winters, the summers are okay. We have like 2 months of total sunshine and 10 months of total darkness. So, you know, there's extremes that obviously just, I think, makes us crazy or something.
And of course, like being a small country and being like Iceland, now maybe people know more about Iceland, but 20 years ago no one knew, never even heard of Iceland. And part of that is the music and the culture, and like bands like the Sugar Cubes and Björk and Sigur Rós.
Yeah, they really paved the way.
About the success of Icelandic music, like the quality view here of the bands, it's also our total lack of understanding of our place in the world. Like we don't realize how few we are and how shitty we should be, if you look at the numbers.
We had a minister once that was talking about the Icelandic moon.
Yeah.
Oh, the Icelandic moon is...
Yeah, so that's not a thing.
What I always remember from when we started was, and I think the thing that got us, that made it way more fun to do shows, was the openness in the scene of Iceland, you know, towards other genres. You could do a show with a hip hop act and an indie act, and then our kind of music, and then a metal. Yeah. So we were always doing shows with a lot of different people, different genres.
Yeah,
I think that's
like we're such a small country with few people, and I think it becomes more of maybe a tighter community than in some other places.
Yeah.
No one wants to sound like anyone else.
Exactly.
That's the main thing. Like the Icelandic scene is always like you have to be unique.
Yeah.
In 2016, Skalmold got acknowledged by the National Icelandic Teachers Association for contributing to the Icelandic language. The Skalmold lyrics and music are currently used nationwide in Icelandic schools to inspire interest in poetry, the Norse heritage, and the science of the Icelandic tongue. The lyrics are all written under the strict rules of the ancient Icelandic poetry and influenced by the heathen roots of the Nordic nation.
Bibi, my brother, he's really good with words when it comes to lyrics.
He's not very good using words in communicating with other people.
Not that much, no. But he has a really good skill set of using the language in difficult ways for the rest of us. So the lyrics are extremely well made. So that's also a thing a lot of Icelanders are diving into when they're checking out our bands. If you don't necessarily like the music itself, not all the screaming and everything, you can check out the poetry. So the schools are using the opportunity of taking something that's been popular and they know and they want to listen to make them interested in that, to keep it alive, because we need to work on keeping this tradition alive if we want to hold on to it.
Yeah, I mean, the language will fade out if we don't work on it, and that's, I think, what we are doing in Iceland, trying to make sure that
How long are you gonna aim?
I was
20 years?
like 2 years.
If we wanna have Icelandic still in 1.5 years, then we should have to work hard on it.
Christmas time.
The Valhalla of heavy metal, Scandinavia. According to research, the highest density of metal bands can be found in Norway, Sweden and Finland.
The metal scene in Finland is, has been, I would say, really big. It's sort of going away now, but it started out really like pretty underground, but it evolved into something that, you listen to at home. You could turn on the radio and there was like metal shows during like prime time radio, and you could go into like a cafe and they would have like some kind of rock metal-ish songs on in Finland.
It's kind of massive. Yeah. There's just shitloads of bands, like way too much. All the rehearsal places what Finland has are like overbooked, and it's like there's bands standing in line for years before they can get a decent place to practice, for example. So there's a lot of demand for that one. And for the metal scene, I don't think like any given month, if you check out the official charts on the top 40, you can see probably 10 to 15, 20 metal albums, like any given time. So Finland is very, very heavy metal country.
I guess it was with Nightwish getting the big fame at some point, and of course Lordi that won the Eurovision, because then it was allowed for your grandma and granddad also to listen to metal all of a sudden.
Hard rock, hallelujah. Hard rock, yeah. Rock hero angels, wind on hard rock, hallelujah.
It was huge in Finland, like it reached the top like maybe 10 years ago. It was like after Lordi won the Eurovision Song Contest, and the Finnish Idols winner was like a heavy metal guy, and every grandma and granddad was into metal 10 years ago, and that was like the peak, and I'm happy it's going a bit down, back where it used to be like in the 90s. I think in Finland it's pretty easy to play in band, because in wintertime there's not much to do anything else if you don't want to build snow castles and throw snowballs.
It's a dark and cold country, so I think that's just excellent basis for metal, and you can hear that also like in Norway and Sweden, that somehow I think that affects the music, at least in the way that the melodies are very melancholic a lot of times, and that suits metal very well. So.
Some kind of like Finnish melancholy is usually present in Finnish bands, which makes like something with Finnish folklore and Finnish folklore music, which is pretty played in minor key, and it's like a sad stuff. We were just yesterday laughing. We were in a Mexican restaurant and there was this Mexican music played in endless tape, and nobody does that kind of happy music in Finland.
Well, you can take it as the easy thing as Finland, Sweden, Norway. It's totally different. Of course, Norway, it's like the biggest music export is like black metal. So of course, but Sweden also have always had, the pop side, the ABBA side to it.
It's kind of mainstream. Like metal,
it is. Nowadays it is.
Yeah, nowadays. Metal in Sweden it's pretty normal. But it's not that big either. It was pretty big during the 80s, because either you were listening to synth music or metal music.
Yeah, and we're better at exporting metal music than actually appreciating what we have at home.
But at the Gates in Flames, The Haunted.
Dark Tranquility.
Yeah, Dark Tranquility also pretty big in Sweden.
Of course it has changed. Like when we started out, it was no one knew about it. It was very strange, something that was just a little fringe thing. Then, like in the 80s, when like Kiss and Wasp and bands like that came, that was a huge, big deal, and that's why I got into it, because all of a sudden everyone was talking about it on TV and how fucking dangerous it was, how you shouldn't worship Satan and all that stuff, and that's why I started loving it, because that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be part of that Satan worshipping cult that is metal music. But nowadays, it's really accepted. It's fine. I mean, they realize that some of the biggest exports of Sweden are metal bands, basically. I wouldn't say it's like accepted, but it's very much tolerated.
Sweden has it's a very good foundation for playing music in general, and especially band type of music. We are treating our young artists very well compared to other places. We have a good amount of nice venues in the smaller where you start, and I think often, yes, of course, people say, oh, but you have the legacy of great ABBA or whatever. But I still think that the mentality of how people in Sweden treat other people has to do more with it. Because if you come and you're 12 years old and you have your first gig and you look forward to it so much, and it will not matter if there is 10 people or 100 people, it will still be amazing.
It's your first concert.
Before you come there, it will be amazing. And then if you come and do that concert, let's say in England, you are greeted when you come to the venue by somebody who say, fuck off, fire, you can plug your amplifier up your ass, you little twat. And then you ask, can I get a bottle of water to drink? No, you can drink your own piss if you want to drink something. The mentality. And then you stand on the stage and you want to do, maybe test the amplifier sound check, and somebody, turn that shit down. And yeah, so that's, it hurts a 12-year-old and destroys the whole, what you have built up. When you come in Sweden and you're a 12-year-old and you come to a little place, they say, here's you can drink water, here's a shower, here's some food for you. The hospitality, and then suddenly everything works and you are so happy when you go home, because it was an amazing experience. Even if there was only one person in the crowd, it wouldn't matter.
We have this thing in Sweden called jantelagen.
Yeah.
Which means it's a law that you should. It basically means you shouldn't think that you are someone.
Yeah. You can't think that you're better than anyone else.
Yeah.
And I think that plays a big role.
It's a saying in Sweden, like that you don't want to be better than anyone else. There's this kind of like, hey, I'm no one. Don't care. Don't worry about me. Just don't. You don't want to be better than anyone else. It's like, don't want to brag, don't want to stand out too much. And this is a very Scandinavian attitude. And it's easier for us. It's the reason why there are so many alcoholics. We are afraid of talking about feelings. So we drink and we play music.
Last but not least, the country which is famous and notorious for its black metal, Norway.
Yeah, I think it's become really, really mainstream in Norway. Not frowned upon at all. It's just like, oh, yeah. Where I work, it's really cool. We have a guy who's playing in the band and they're, supporting it. So, everybody is more or less.
Yeah, we have cultural fundings. They don't differ between jazz, opera, or metal, or black metal. It's the same. And also on governmental, I don't know, they said they had meetings in the foreign ministry in Norway, and they said that black metal from Norway is now an officially an export article, also together with fish and oil and gas. So
it's come a long way since 1993 when other stuff were going on back in Norway.
The biggest albums released, although not too many hard copies sold, the first, second, third place in the official charts, Satiric and Dimmu Borgir, and then Enslaved. We also were in the charts actually. And also the Grammys, we have only own metal categories for Grammys.
Og vinneren Enslaved! Enslaved et norsk progressivt ekstremmetallband som ble dannet i Haugesund i 1991, da Grutle Kjelsson og Ivar Bjørnson var henholdsvis 17 og 13 år gamle. Låttekstene omhandler norsk mytologi, vikinger og natur. Og dette tredje gangen gruppa henter hjem.
We felt almost, this is underground music, we felt that the death metal underground was our thing. And suddenly we saw like death metal bands showing up on MTV with fancy shirts and Bermuda shorts and baskets, shoes, and being commercial. I was like, we fucking hated that. We were young and we were aggressive, and we didn't want to be a part of that. So I think it was like a mutual agreement on all the bands in Norway, initiated by Euronymous of Mayhem, and he said, we have to do something. We have to cut the crap and go backwards. We have to listen to Venom records and Battery and Celtic Frost and play primitive music again, and with more guts. And that was easy to cope with when we were 17 years old.
It made sense.
It made perfect sense. Like, fuck let's dive in. Let's retire into the underground. Let's do this for real. Strip everything down and just play extreme music. So most of the bands agree on that philosophy, and that's how the so-called Black Circle movement or Norwegian black metal were created, actually. There, and I guess it could happen anywhere else, but it did happen in Norway. It didn't happen in Sweden. Sweden has always been known for catchy pop music, and all the bands, no matter what the genre is, they all sound very catchy. They all sound like ABBA. Norwegian music sounds much more harsh, much more, it's like a poor man's music, more or less. It's like the people that have suffered for a while, infected by bad weather or suicide, and have had a harsh life. It's not jolly like the Swedish music.
But is that typical for Norway? Because I feel that difference as well. That
have you ever been there?
Norway, you have always that raw edge, so to say. To the
have you been there? Have you seen the country? It's a pile of rocks. It's harsh, and it does something with it to you. It's like the environment is always infecting your mind.
And that's what you see back in the music.
You do, yeah. In not only in metal, you see it in Norwegian jazz music, Norwegian electronica, even in Norwegian pop music. Even Aha had some melancholy pop. Really some darkness edge to it. Okay. Even those guys, So that's something that it comes from a rough history and a rough climate. Where I live, it rains 260 days a year. Of course, that does something with set of mind, and the music and the lyrics you make. It's difficult to travel in between places. It's either too expensive or either too hard. In wintertime, don't even think about driving from Bergen to Oslo. No, it's too extreme. You can do it, but on your own risk, you might die.
We were really never part of a scene, and I don't think scenes are that common anymore. When you have the globalization and the internet and everything, you get inspired globally more than you get inspired from people in your neighborhood. And that's why I think before the internet and everything, there were more scenes could even be in one city. It could be that scene in Seattle with the grunge, for example, or
different subgenres.
Or
area.
Oslo, Bergen with the black metal thing, Gothenburg with their melodic death metal sound, etc., etc. But I don't think it works like that anymore. It's more I feel that thing has kind of disappeared a bit with the digital revolution and the globalization and everything.
Do you think that in the future Norway will still be we see it as like the black metal country of Europe.
It's about time to get rid of that stamp, I think.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And why do you think that?
I don't know, it's just like doing the same thing for 30 years, it's not, I don't like that. I like that something fresh and new happens, and yeah. Respect for what it is and for what it was, and for the bands that still are great in the genre, but I mean, it's
time to move on.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's time to evolve, and some bands are doing bands like Enslaved, for example, they're like really managing to push it in new directions. And if you play black metal, there are rules you're expected to follow. It's just like, oh, they're adding a keyboard, that's not old school, or oh, they're clean vocals, that's not old school, or they're like they're standing there with short hair and doing this and that, that's not old school. Oh, they're experimenting with another genre, that's not old school. So it's like there's a lot of rules within that. It's very it's funny how it became the opposite of what it originally was.
Okay, so it seemed like metal has become a mainstream genre in Scandinavia, an export product which everyone can listen, funded by the government. We wanted to experience how this music genre is perceived in other countries. We randomly booked a ticket and set out on a journey. We couldn't find a bigger contrast when we traveled to an, for us, unknown destination, Ukraine. Here we visited the annual metal festival Oscarai, where we talked with bands like Skyforger from Latvia. This country, close to Finland, was occupied during the Second World War by the Soviets and Germany, only restoring full independence since 1991. We learned this had a huge impact not only on the country but on the metal scene as well.
For us it started a little bit difficult, yeah, because when we started there was still Soviet Union, and to get some metal records it was really hard. The equipment was poor, was really hard to get some serious equipment. Most was self-made or shitty Soviet equipment. It was really hard, but yeah, we was, when you are young you are optimistic, yeah? You are ready for everything. And I remember, or the wildest dream and biggest dream was get a CD, a record CD. And we thought like, oh, if there will be ever time and we somehow can do it, then this will be the top. Yeah. For a small nations, this cultural thing, it's a big thing to keep this nation together. Okay. If you have this culture, folk songs, music, art, everything like this, which kept us together, and how we survived Soviet times, all these times, because our country was under occupation for so many years. There was Germans, Poles, Swedes, Russians, and we still survived. We still survived. Our language survived. Our culture survived. Yeah? And it's only because of this folk national. Yeah. For us, it was all this folk music and folk movement and culture was like an underground resistance against this Soviet shit.
In an interview with God's Tower from Belarus, we dived even deeper into the influence of the dictatorship on the heavy metal scene in Eastern Europe.
Metal is the way to survive. At first, it's a way to survive in Belarus, because if you are... So, all you had to know about Belarus, this is a dictatorship. It's a communist-like country with a bureaucracy, with a police, with a KGB, and with a old crazy president. There is no at all a freedom of newspapers, freedom of word. There is no. There is no free radio stations broadcasting. There is no, just internet. and this internet is state is trying to control this internet. So the metal, for me and for a lot of people in Belarus, is the only way to survive as a person. It's when you have to say something what you have inside, you cannot say to everyone. You can tell it just to your friends and listeners. So you do it in music, you do it in metal. You can do it in metal only because the metal is the only music when you can do it right and directly. But the worst thing I could say that the metal is dying. I think metal is dying. It's not the same as it was 20 years old. Then it was more rageful, more. Yeah. Now it's looking like some kind of philosophy.
Staying in the cold Ukraine a little longer, we met up with Anna from the so-called satanic pop metal band Sumargo.
We don't make any promotion in Ukraine. We never appear on some radios. We never give interviews. We don't play gigs. Only sometimes if something cool, and we do it. So we do nothing for Ukrainian audience actually, and we sing on English. It means that we just reduce this and we refuse everything from this side because in Ukraine fans are less open-minded than in Europe. Yes, actually the second problem is a religion. For example, in European countries you are free to promote your opposite position from the church, like we do. We are like promoting Satanism. And in Ukrainians, actually, it's not forbidden, but still it's a problem. And I already told you personally that some time ago our show was forbidden by a measure because he was very Christian, you know. That means that we don't have a chance to be big in Ukraine. Never ever. Because to be big in Ukraine, you should give people what they want. But we want to do what we want. Yes. Some bands started to play Allah, you know, like American or European bands. But it was shitty because there should be some evolution inside the person to feel what they're doing. It takes time, and they try to pretend like a metal bands. Yeah, that's why a metal and actually whole music scene from Soviet Union and post-Soviet Union is a bit shitty. Nothing from this side. Everything was copied from USA and from Europe. If you are free, then you are free to create something new. If you are limited, then you can do something inside these limits. Nothing new.
Yeah, we have some good bands, but it seems they don't interested to go further. They just play in domestic shows in some venues and pubs, having their followers, and they are happy with that. It's complicated to get in Europe first because we have visa regime, as you know. It is not really cheap because you need to invest in your band.
Yeah.
If you want to go further, you need to invest. Nobody wants to invest. Not really many people wants to invest because we suffer not really good times for Ukraine nowadays. We had much better, so we had some some successful bands back then. So now only a few bands can invest. But if you want to go further, you must do it.
Yeah.
You must do it.
Our next stop is Lithuania, where Linas and Vilius showed us around and gave insight in the Lithuanian metal scene.
Do you think that the Soviet Union has an influence on how the metal scene is today in Lithuania?
It has a major influence to the whole culture.
Yeah.
It's like we just like regenerating from that times. Because my parents told me when they were young it was very rebellious to listen to anything, to like alternative, and it was really hard to find music. It was like prohibited to have like foreign records and everything. So there were hard times, and in the Western countries those were good times for music.
In the 90s, like in 1990, when we declared independence, it was like, and you know, some historian says that the rock music like exploded this revolution. You know, it was very connected because rock metal is always rebellious, and for example, bands were making like some politically supporting gigs, like rock and metal bands, and they got big crowds, like thousands of people came, you know. And if
happened after the independence.
Yes, when we declared independence, I was like 12 or 13 years, you know. But we were going to live shows, and it was like some metal bands playing, local bands, and it was like 5,000 people, you know. And not only metalheads, but also like just common people. But they were all like, yeah,
because it was possible, and you know, you were independent. So
yes,
to celebrate.
it was like the symbol of freedom. Yeah.
Like in the old times, we had a huge, I could say, cult of paganism. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a few bands who were playing black metal with pagan influences, yeah, with religious thoughts. It was
patriotic.
Yeah, patriotic thoughts. It was Populus, Optest.
The whole metal scene grew up on those like roots, on the patriotism, because of the history of ours.
Back then, like 10 years ago, I think Lithuania was becoming famous for its like Baltic pagan metal bands or something, because I think this Baltic identity was a chance to Lithuanians, Estonians, Latvians, to Baltic states to just to show themselves in the worldwide community of metal.
It's changed or evolved in very different ways. Number one would be the quality of the music, let's say, of the venues, of the records, and everything is better now. I would say regarding this particular thing, but regarding the people themselves, I think people are less committed to this thing. Because I don't see such big, I don't know, reason to rebel, you know, against. There are not so many things to rebel against something. There are no. The whole environment, let's say, the social environment around us, it's not so hostile anymore. Because in the beginning of the 90s, I don't know, it was kind of, you know, difficult. It was even, I don't know, you can, it was possible to be beaten because you were wearing, you know, long hair and so on and so on. It's not so common these days, you know. Most of the bands are playing very well, international, let's say, level, but it's hard for them. Very hard for them to get recognition in the international level because of our geographical position. you know, in the map, and the fact that our market is so limited, so small, you know, only 3 million people living, and how many of them are metalheads, you know, it's very tiny bit.
Is it still the same nowadays?
Yes, but now it changes forms. Everyone is like on Facebook, on social networks, and I know, for example, about the events and everything from social networks. Back then it was like, you know, this mail underground with the post letters and sending demo tapes, fanzines and things. And now it's on Facebook, and you can, you know.
I don't think it's underground anymore, but it's a global thing. I think that metal is the same mainstream thing as all the other genres, and it's really the matter of your attitude to it, how you live. If you go to a metal concert and buy merchandise and or fancy things which costs even more than, I don't know, Britney Spears merchandise, I don't know how much it costs, but I think something like that, and you still think that it's underground, fucking lies. So I think that if someone is thinking that metal is still underground, he is very, very far from the truth. Because is it a bad thing? And if, let's say, for example, in Lithuania, black metal, I find it really popular. So can I call it mainstream metal style in Lithuania? So, but if black metal is mainstream, so what? It's pop.
Moving to the center of Europe, we were invited to an interesting place for an interview with the band Nasty Rats in Prague.
We as a nation, we want to copy everything from the outside, from the American, from Sweden and stuff. And, you know, we are not good at learning, I guess. So it's in 90%, it sounds like a parody of something, unfortunately. Even we used to sound as parody, and hopefully we don't nowadays. But
where does that come from, that thing of trying to copy from other different countries?
I don't know. It's just, you know, Czech mentality, I guess, in everything, not in music only, you know, because they're like currently in this situation, there are like two camps of people. One camp wants to be more American, and the second wants to be more Russian, I guess, because we are in the middle, and there are only few people that wants to be Czech. You know. Every country has something special, I guess, maybe, but in the origins, I think not nowadays. For example, for our genre is actually the Sweden is a cradle, you know. So there are many great bands, many great sleaze bands based in Sweden, and we all want to play like they do, you know. But when we come to Germany and Poland and Italy, nobody cares we are from the Czech Republic. They just care if we are good or not. So we play there.
When you started a band in the 80s, in the communist regime, you had to perform your music before some commission, you know, in front of some commission, and they said, yeah, you can, you cannot. Yeah. You hadn't the freedom to compose, to perform live.
So, what we try to represent with Velichorus is nothing less than what we are. So deep inside of ourselves, besides the Siberian part, we're all trying to show our nature, our animalism, or if you read lyrics that we've written, we always have a Russian version and under them translated English version. Some of them really resemble to what we go through day life.
After the cold in Ukraine and Lithuania, we were excited to travel down south to Barcelona in Spain, only to find out that, well...
Yeah, no support. No support. The rehearsal rooms are very expensive. Very expensive. There is little or no help at all from, well, governments or town halls to make any concerts, or we don't have everything is private.
The scene here is very weird, okay?
big bands, crowded. Intermediate bands, almost empty.
Yeah.
And local bands, just friends.
There's an underground scene, and I mean it's not as powerful as in other countries in the north, but there's always a background scene that you can go and find like really interesting bands, and they are very good, and they have like European level, but it's very hard for them to climb.
But here in Spain, we are used to, I don't want to talk about politics, but we are used to get everything, if you can get it free, better get it free.
Okay.
So when piracy came out, piracy here was like, you know, it's free, it's free, music free, movies for free, everything for free. Even if you go to a concert like this, there are many people that say, okay, it's €8, but does it come with a drink, or it's just, and they say, well, I don't have a job, well, it's times are very hard.
What we also see here, I don't know if in other countries of Europe, is bands that are sort of aren't original. They cover other bands, like you get, for example, for Iron Maiden, well, a band here called Invaders, that they do just Iron Maiden songs. So you get maybe festivals, and they fill the gigs. So people would rather go to those sort of gigs than local bands or whatever.
Why is it so that in Spain people tend to be more in cover bands than make their own music? Is it
lack of originality, also probably
a lack of musical culture.
Yeah, lack of musical culture. People also, if there is sort of audience that wants to go to those shows, well, there's people that make money out of this. I mean, some of these bands even make their own merchandise.
Yeah. As a cover band.
Yeah, I think that is pathetic. I mean.
But you mentioned like the lack of a musical culture.
No, it's not a lack of musical culture. It's something like a fear to the unknown.
I remember when I was 15 years old. I'm not so old, and I remember going out with, not like this, of course, but I remember going out with a leather jacket, or I remember going out just with some like this, and the people is like, hey, be careful, he's going to steal our purse.
If you would describe like a typical Spanish metalhead, how would you describe it?
Well, I think you cannot find a typical Spanish metalhead, because there are some metalheads that just love Spanish rock and roll, Spanish heavy metal, and metalheads that just love international stuff. And also metalheads that like both of them. So there's not a typical guy you say, that's the typical Spanish metalhead.
So what about other Mediterranean countries? Let's take a look at Italy.
I think that anyway, as far as metal is concerned, we've had in the past some big examples, cool bands like, I don't know, for example, like Unicoil, Rhapsody,
now Flesh God Apocalypse.
Flesh God Apocalypse, for example, but or maybe other historical bands like Death SS, or you know, but the examples have been very few of big bands that really emerge and play big festivals in Europe and big tours in America and so on. So I think that maybe basically is because of that, because you know there have been very few examples of great bands coming out from the metal scene. Also because the real great bands were all coming from Scandinavia, from Germany, and you know, and also in Italy, people is following that scene, and you know, who's that band? I don't know. Hardcore Superstar. Where do you come from? Sweden. Cool. We're from Italy. Oh, okay. That's
one very good example of Flesh God Apocalypse, for example. I don't want to talk for ourselves. Okay. So let's do another sample. Flesh God Apocalypse are one of the biggest band in the extreme scene right now. They play everywhere around. They full pack the venue. When they play in Italy, the venue are empty.
I think it's very cool when you can reach also the influences of your country. For example, Flesh God Apocalypse, they were able to bring the classical music maybe inside extreme metal.
There is a problem with Italy. The fact that we have about 70% of the artistic production in the history of humanity in our country, it's unbelievable, but it's like that. People are so used to that compared to other countries where there's nothing like that, there is not a serious interest into development of art and of contemporary art. So the mentality is very old school, also in a way that if there's countries where the city hall would invest for like making a band, a metal band, play a show, let's say with the orchestra, for example. This is something that in Italy will never happen, but it will never happen because before that, institutions don't even know the existence of metal music because it's too old school, and also we also have a lot of problems with corruption, all that stuff. The South is like that. Yeah. It's always like that. There's these two things. We're passionate on things, but in the meantime, there's many social and politics problems that make the mentality incredibly more narrow compared to other places where there could be the interest of opening mind and investing even resources.
They're so focused on like the certain issues that they don't pay attention to.
Yeah, and I really think it's incredibly how the climate, the weather influence this. Like the warmer countries have always those kind of problems with society. I don't know, because I don't know, maybe it's too hot so people freaks out. I don't know, but
for us, we are from Italy. You practice guitar 1 hour, then you go outside to the beach and seaside, and that's it.
It's too hot to practice.
Yeah, exactly.
Pizza
and so on. So
together with this, there is the fact that we have a big problem with mafia.
Yeah.
That is a very big thing in Italy. It's because it's in between the law, it's in between the state, it's everywhere. You can't really separate the two things completely. And in the south is also territorial. While in the north and in the center they get into economy in many different ways, in the south is also present in a very territorial way, meaning that if you have a shop, you're gonna pay a part of what you earn to the mafia, otherwise the shop is gonna set on fire. I really believe that this kind of cultural difficulties, this kind of hunger for making it and doing something that in history maybe has been done just a few times from Italy, talking about metal music, it's something that was really fuel for us.
In the summer of 2017, we visited Dinkelsbühl in Germany for one of the largest heavy metal festivals, Summer Breeze Open Air. We spoke with the founder of the festival Summer Breeze, Ralf Nüsser.
I think, first of all, Germany is one of the most important markets when it comes to metal music. Also that when metal was new, lots of German metal bands tried to play metal, and they had this German sound, and everybody was trying to sound American or English, and this German sound has become a trademark actually. There's so many good and successful bands, you know them all, Creator, Sodom, Running Wild, whatever, and they have created their own sound, and nowadays bands from abroad, like from the US or wherever in the world, try to find the German sound. I don't think that this is something you will find in too many countries. So this is a typical German thing, and the fans are pretty loyal and true to the band. So, like Lemmy said, the German audience always helped us out when we were running out of money. So we said, okay, let's tour Germany, because you can rely on them.
Was auf jeden Fall sehr interessant ist an der Metal-Szene ist, der Umgang untereinander zwischen den Leuten. Wenn Metalheads sich begegnen, gerade auf Festivals oder so, gehen halt immer erstmal davon aus, jeder ist mein Freund. Ich komme mit jedem zurecht und ich akzeptiere erstmal jeden. Was mich immer ein bisschen wundert, was ich auch ein bisschen schade finde, ist, dass es zumindest nach außen hin sehr wenig Kulturvielfalt gibt. Also man sieht zum Beispiel wenig Frauen mit Kopftüchern in der Metal-Szene. Aber wenn einer da wäre, kann ich mir gut vorstellen, dass dagegen niemand was sagen würde oder irgendwie jemanden anfeindet aufgrund seiner Hautfarbe, seiner Kultur oder Religion. Also da erlebe ich Metalheads erstmal wahnsinnig liberal und offen. Und ich finde es deswegen sehr schade, dass es da nicht mehr gibt, die irgendwie ihre andere Kultur leben und trotzdem dieser Metal-Passion folgen.
I think metal is nowadays more fashion than anything else. I'm a teacher, as I told, and for example, my pupils, they are younger and they say to me they will visit Wacken. And I ask them, why are you going to visit Wacken? You listen to rap or hip hop? Yeah, just to be there. I want to say I visited Wacken. And so they pay a lot of money to visit this festival. In my youth it was something like, oh, you're going to Wacken, you can see all the bands you were waiting for. Now it's like, yeah, it's a holiday, it's just like a big party, nothing more.
It's more of a fashion statement.
Yeah, it is. Look to H&M, I don't know, the clothes. So you can buy Iron Maiden shirts, you can buy Slayer shirts, and it's fashion.
Ja, das habe ich schon so festgestellt. Also das ist einfach so jetzt in der Metal-Szene, wenn da jemand kommt mit zum Beispiel kurzen Haaren oder der nicht schwarz angezogen ist, dann wird da niemand was gegen sagen. So, dann wäre das völlig in Ordnung. Wenn da jetzt aber jemand irgendwie auf so einem Festival ankommt und sagt so, ja, nee, ich finde Metal scheiße, dann wäre das wahrscheinlich schon so dieses, okay, was willst du denn hier? So, das ist, also ich glaube, wenn man die Musik nicht mag, würde das eher bemerkt werden, als wenn man jetzt nicht unbedingt dem Style-Klischee entspricht.
We have two kinds of people in Germany. We have the one kind of people when they want to do something and you say to them, that's not possible, you can't do this. Then they say, you're right, I should do something else. And then they work in a bank or something like that. The other kind of German people, when you say to them, you cannot do this, then they say, okay, now I will do this just to prove it to you, yes, I can. And then we start a metal company in our garage. And then a few years later, it's the most important metal label in the world. Wacken, the Summerbeast as well, they started because they had an own band and they wanted to be on stage, but no one let them. So what should you do?
Organize it yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
You invent your own festival, and then of course you invite some other bands, some friends of you, and then from them it grew and grew and grew. You can see it with Creator again, really, really strong through the metal scene in the Ruhrpott. The Ruhrpott was the area where coal was grabbed out of the earth. So really tough area with smoke everywhere and dust everywhere and really tough work. And this was the cell where Germany started the metal scene with bands like Creator, for example, and of course it really harsh and aggressive music. Sodom is another band to mention from this area, and it reflected the kind of living there. Similar to the English start with Black Sabbath, also in Birmingham, working area as well, like the Ruhrpott here in Germany. So this was the start.
You said that Germany is one of the biggest markets for metal, which obviously is, but why is that? Why is that a typical German thing that it is so big here, or why is metal so successful in Germany?
I really don't know. Maybe it's it touches the German soul. It's a kind of old-fashioned, And the metal fan itself, or himself, is very old-fashioned on one hand. On the other hand, of course, he's very into new things, and he wants to attract people, and wearing leather and spikes is like, what you want? And on the other hand, he's very traditional, in a good as well as in a bad meaning. And maybe, and the music is as well. Yeah. And maybe that touches the German traditional, slightly dusty mind. I don't know. Okay. I don't know. Never thought about that.
After visiting the Cernunos festival in France, we wanted to know more about the French metal culture.
I think the French scene is a bit of an outcast scene in a way. I think France started to be more renowned in the whole world with bands like maybe Gojira, or which are the #1 band in France. And I'm not sure we ever had a band that was that successful before. French metal wasn't necessarily present in the medias before as much as now. There are some common points, I think, in the metal bands in France. They all have this kind of sophistication, which some people may like or not.
I think, for me, and correct me if you don't agree, but I think some kind of French spirits really enjoy some kind of metaphysical or intellectual posture, and you can find this in the early black metal scene in France. There are people who are thinking, even if they are worshipping Satan, taking drugs and stuff like this, there is an aesthetics standpoint, and that's why it's very interesting. And
on a very pragmatic way, you can say that in Sweden, for instance, in school programs, young people are getting to learn how to play music and how to play guitar very young. They can have money from the state who will help them to get music course and stuff like this. We don't have this in France. So when you've got a state, it's part of the culture, and it helps, it leads you to play some music more and frequently. Yeah, sorry?
Yeah, more frequently.
Yeah.
Other styles. Yeah.
In France, we mostly
it's very hierarchical. It's very elitist. You have to learn classical music, learn and stuff, and everything connected to rock or metal. It's like
it's discarded. Yeah.
No, don't do this.
Do you think you could have been the same band if you originated from a different country?
No, even a different place in France. Because I'm from the south of France. And France it's not a very, very big country. It's rather small, but it's very diverse. So if you are from the south, you are not going to have the same attitude as someone from the north, or there are really differences in a way.
What kind of differences?
I don't know. It's it's like small things, of course, but it's the way we are raised and everything, and the landscape around us,
In April 2017, we visited Debris Rock Festival near the small medieval town of Debris in Wallonia, Belgium. This festival is located in the French-speaking part of Belgium. After talking with the band Actaren, we found out that there is a big cultural difference between the French part of Belgium and the Dutch part.
Tell us a bit more about the metal scene in Belgium. What is it like?
Shitty. Really shitty. Yeah, the metal scene in Belgium, it's not really, comment je peux dire, diversifié. Ouais.
Diverse?
Ouais. Exactly, yeah. We have a lot of hardcore band in Belgium, a lot of hardcore band because it's in the mood at the moment.
I think it works like I don't know if you take Black Sabbath, if you take Iron Maiden. At first, it was music maybe for the working class, and I think hardcore in Belgium is exactly the same. Yeah. It's for the working class, who works their asses off and needs something to relieve their, anger or something. Or it has to be simple. It has to be straight. If you listen to prog metal, well, it's not really easy.
Because to be it doesn't mean anything to be a real Belgian. Yeah, because this one comes from France at first. This one comes from Holland. I come from Italy. Where is the real Belgium here? It's about social stuff in the middle of in the. En 1900.
Maybe c'est les 60s. In the
60s, because the south part of Belgium in Wallonie, we were back in the days way more rich than the Dutch community in the north, and then it's the opposite. And I guess the Flanders communities were a little bit pissed off about us because we had a lot of workers here from other countries who are working the mine, and I guess it's an old war mine, but we don't give a fuck now. Our generation don't give a shit about that, but we can see Dutch communities, Flanders communities, sorry, are still more, pissed about that.
Like the change from being the rich part to...
Yeah, now you're poor and we are rich and go fuck yourself. And that's exact way of thinking of the North community, mostly, not everyone.
Yeah, of course, but the general...
Yeah.
Don't you think it's not the media just talking about borders, frontiers between peoples? Yeah. And then I talked to a Flander dude. I give him a beer. I think it's gonna be friendly,
Yeah, absolutely.
And if he gives me a beer, I'll be friendly. Yeah. Well, that's
It's easy as that.
Yeah, let's be honest, fuck the politics, I don't know exactly if we're connected, but we're really close to the French culture in general.
Yeah.
So in music and metal, maybe a little, but I think bands like famous French bands are really popular. Popular. Famous. In the French part of Belgium, because they speak French.
Yeah. Altijd al gehad, ook met andere bands, ook niet in de metal, maar jullie Nederlanders, jullie zijn minder terughoudend. Ik bedoel, in België kan je zo vaak hebben, ik illustreer het altijd zo. Je begint je show en dan staat de first reizer naar je uit te kijken. Zo. En dan zeg je van, come on, steek jullie handen in de lucht. En dan zie je zo die first reizer van, wel ja, oké, omdat hem het vraagt. Zo. En in Nederland is het dan zo van, come on, steek jullie handen in de lucht. Eindelijk vraagt hij het. Ja, maar dat is een beetje betekent. Jullie zijn minder terughoudend, veel meer zin om te feesten. En waardoor komt dat, denk ik? Dat is in alles met jullie Nederlanders. Jullie zeggen gewoon wat jullie denken. Wij denken, België, wij denken over alles veel te veel. Alles moet 25 keer omgedraaid worden voordat we beslissen nemen. Jullie weten zo, leuk, we doen dat. Daarom dat wij jullie ook niet goed af kunnen op vakantie op een camping of zo. Lawaai dat jullie maken! Ja, goed, daar gaat het interview niet over.
Back in the Netherlands, we traveled to the northern part of the country. In Frisia, where they even have their own language, we met with the Frisian metal band Baldur's Trauma.
Nou ja, wij vinden het heel belangrijk, ook als band, maar ook zeker met het Friese bezig zijn, om mensen erbij bij te betrekken. En ik denk dat dat een van de belangrijkste dingen is. metal, maar ook onze akoestische muziek heeft een ontzettend bindende factor, denk ik, in Friesland. Ja, een stukje verbroedering.
En ook een stukje...
nee, maar ook daarbuiten zeker. Ja,
denk ik, hè? Ja. Het is ook een stukje bewustwording, ook voor de Fries zelf, van waar komen we nou eigenlijk vandaan? Ja. Maar ook een stuk verbroedering, van je wilt samen weer iets uitstralen en je wilt samen ook trots kunnen zijn op iets. Wij zijn trots op dat wij een achtergrond hebben. Ja. Maar als wij in Ierland spelen en je ziet het vuur branden van die Ieren die vechten voor hun eigen identiteit, dan voelen wij dat net zo met hun mee. En ik denk dat dat is wat wij ook over willen dragen. Ja. Je mag trots zijn op waar je vandaan komt. Je hebt als volk een achtergrond, heb je een verhaal en dat heeft gezorgd voor een bepaalde identiteit. En ik denk, ik word ook geraakt door die Ier die staat voor zijn identiteit. En ik hoop dat wij dat ook uit mogen stralen. En wat ik bijvoorbeeld ook niet wist, en wat ik nou zo bijzonder vind, is we komen dan al veel in Oost-Friesland, in Duitsland om te spelen. En die mensen die zeggen, wij zeggen wel als Fries, wij voelen ons Fries, hè? Wij zeggen wel, wij zijn Friezen. Wij zeggen al, wij zijn geen Nederlanders in die zin, wij voelen ons Fries. En dan kom je in Oost-Friesland en dan zeggen die Duitsers, die zeggen, we zijn geen Duitsers, we zijn Friesen. Weet je? En dat is super mooi, dat je dat toch bij elkaar dan ook weer raakt en dat dus ook weer verbroedert met elkaar. Ook al spreek je niet direct dezelfde taal, je hebt iets in het verleden wat je met elkaar verbindt en dat leeft. En dat is mooi. Ja.
To take a closer look at the metal scene in the Netherlands, we traveled from the north to the south, back where it all began.
It's all due to one thing, it's just the weather and the atmosphere, the nature that we have in Northern Europe compared to the south of Europe. And Holland is slightly different from Germany or Scandinavia and Britain as well, because, you know, in weather terms and musically as well, we have a sea climate here. It's not really cold, it's not really warm, it's all in the middle. And that being in the middle in Holland is so cold. It's also a vibe of living. We call it polderen, which means actually being in the middle of everything and trying to be in the middle of everything, because that's where you feel best as a Dutch guy, not being extreme on that side and not being extreme on that side. Because the weather is so, it's in our system to be so. And our music might be the same. There's not really bands coming from Holland that are really extreme on that side or really extreme on that side. We always try to incorporate different influences. Just like we are, there's something of this, something that, a bit of that, spice of that. And most bands in Holland are like that. They are in the middle of everything and not really a thing with a certain formula.
And there, on a greater scale, you see like where the big metal names are coming from in Holland. They're like outside of the Randstad, like the cities of Rotterdam, Utrecht and Amsterdam. Like the whole death metal thing was going on in the east side of Holland with Pestilence and Asphyx. And like it was more like a music for the countryside.
People in Holland in general, I already said it like 4 times, people work hard. We like working hard, like working class heroes is Holland, So, and also you come back to the countryside where there's factories, where there's farms. People work day and night, for a living, to build something, to create something. People in Holland travel a lot. We look, outside of our borders. And I think that is very typical Dutch. So in metal and in prog and in heavy music, it's also about creating something genuine, something real, something that lasts. Not like, a little tune and we'll forget about it tomorrow. No. We are very serious about it. So all this together and the scene and people who listen to metal are like brothers, kind of the odd ones out, but there are many of them, so it's kind of a unity. I feel like very much at home.
music and particularly music. I mean, culture unites people, yeah, of course. And cultures cannot cause of trash, but I mean, with music, it's probably the only thing that actually unites people.
It's like a cult, you know. It's like a religion, and you see one of, you see, you know, that black, you know, sweatshirt and or you know, ponytail, and then yeah, it's one of us.
And it's a very different genre of music than the others, because yeah, there is a way of life, metal, and like some signs and everything, shirts, and so I think yeah, the metal fans are also among the best music fans, you know, in the world.
Metal is basically about being true to what you want to do and be true to yourself. That's what it's all about.
A really big percentage of metalheads, it's just a way of living, it's just their life.
Well, I started to listen metal when I was 14 years old guy, and now I'm almost 40. So metal is soundtrack of my life.
So you're meeting different kind of people from different kinds of countries, but you all have the same interest, and that's just, I love it, absolutely love it.